Hello everybody and thank you for joining me. This is Sierra from Sierra T Designs and today I have for you this anniversary card. Let's jump right in. So to start I am going to stamp out my floral bouquet onto some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock, and I am using Simon Says Stamp's Intense Black ink. This is a Copic friendly ink. I did actually heat set this ink. I'm not going to show it to you guys because I think you kind of get the point, but I did heat set it just to try to keep it from, I find that I have trouble with some of my Copic inks. They kind of blur a little bit when I color with my Copic, so I actually have a card that I tried something a bit different with my Copic markers, and I'm going to show you guys pretty soon here, but with this one I just heat set the ink before I started coloring. So this stamp set is the Floral Bunch by Studio Katia. It was a Stamptember 2020 stamp set with Simon Says Stamps, so this isn't available at this point, but there's so many stunning flower bouquets that you could do this with, and I have some of my favorites linked down below, but you can't get this exact one at this point. So we're going to jump right into the Copic coloring, and I'm only going to show you how I colored one of the blooms. I'm going to use R81, R83, RV34, and R56. That's kind of the blend that I use to color these blooms, like the florals. So I always go in with my lightest color. I lay down a wash of that on the petal, and then I go lightest to darkest and back through darkest to lightest. So I'm only going to show you on this first bloom, and I'm going to show you where I like to put my shadows. I put a shadow anywhere that something's laying over top of something else. So in this case, in the floral image, it's anywhere that the petal meets the base, or anywhere that a base, like a petal, sits over top of another petal. I hope that kind of makes sense. So I'm going to go in and I go in with my lightest color, which is in this case the R81, and then I'm going to go over it with my mid-tones, which I used R83 and RV34, and then I used my darkest tone, which is an R56. So this is reds technically, although it's very pink reds, if that makes sense. Like Copic markers are kind of, there's a huge spectrum of color, right? So there's quite a lot of different shades going on in this, and hopefully you can see the marker cap as I kind of color through these, but that's kind of it. And with my darkest color, I have a tendency to honestly just lay down like a line of color. I don't, especially for a bloom, because I mean, they're not big, so there's not a lot of space to lay a lot of color in these, because it's quite a tight bud of florals there. So I mean, I don't lay much of my darkest color, and honestly I feel like I could have gone a bit darker. I could have almost changed up my color palette a little bit here and done a bit of a darker color to get my darkest shadows, but I didn't. This is the color blend that I went with. So I kind of wish I had maybe pulled in a slightly darker color, but that's okay. I think it turned out really pretty. You'll have to let me know what you think, but this is kind of how I went through my Copic coloring. And you'll see that I end up adding a lot more of the dark color once we hit the center of the bloom, because of course as it's closer to the closed center of the flower, it's going to be darker. So I do end up adding a bit more of a darker color once I get closer to the center. And you'll see I have both sketch markers and original markers. So in my original markers, I've actually gone and changed out the chisel nib for the original's version of like a brush marker tip. So I'll have some of those linked down below if you ever want to check them out. I've kind of done that. I'm going through slowly and doing that to all of my original markers, because I ended up with a set of original markers by accident. So I've been just trading them out for different tips so that they're easier to use. So then I have like the bullet nib on one side, and then I have the brush marker version on the chisel nib side. If you own Copic markers, you kind of understand what I'm saying there, but hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, so I'm almost done this first bloom, and I'm only going to color this one in the pink family. I'll show you how I do my greenery and the other stuff after, but I'm just going to show you this one floral. And here I'm going to hold it up in a second so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Hopefully this makes sense. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. Like, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have and kind of discuss anything you'd like to know. So please don't ever feel like you can't kind of ask me. So there's that first floral done, and then we've jumped through, and from the power of editing, I've already colored all the other ones. So I also brought in Y17, and I just put a little bit of the yellow on the center of the flowers just to add a little more dimension to the centers. And then for the greenery around my floral bouquet, I am going to bring in two different colors. I have G16 and G19, which is what I'm using here. And again, I just use the shadow anywhere that something's laying over top of another. A lot of the leaves don't lay over top of one another, so I'll kind of just add a flick of the darker color in the center of the leaf to kind of give it more dimension, if that makes sense. Like it's kind of, you know, simple there. But so for the next set of greenery, I'm going to use a more of a yellow toned green. I have YG06 and G05, and I kind of wish that I had cut out an extra one of these, because you guys know that I like to work in uneven numbers. So I kind of wish that I had had the chance to kind of do that a little differently, but it doesn't really matter, it is what it is. So I brought in the dies. I have the die set for the florals, and I brought in the Simon Says Stamp thin frame dies, and I just cut out a gold like frame to go around my floral bouquet on the card base. And then here you can see I just have some extra there. So I'm going to glue down the frame with some Simon Says Stamp Craft Tacky glue. I like this when I have thinner things just because it's quite a fine tip on the end there, so I find it's a little bit easier to work with when I have a finer thing to glue down, whatever it is. In this case, it's this really thin frame, but I find it's just an easy thing to use with this finer tip. I do find that it clogs every once in a while, so you saw me there, I just brought in a little pin and poked the top of the lid, and then it worked perfectly fine. I am going to pounce off the glue, though. You're going to see here in a second, I'm going to just pounce it onto my glass mat to kind of just take off a little bit of the excess, because I really didn't want it to ooze out everywhere, and I was concerned that it was going to do that. So right there, you see I kind of pounced it on the glass mat, and then I'm going to lay it down onto my card base. So this is an A2 sized card base, a side fold, and I'm just going to lay that down. Now, honestly, I'm not sure that I got it perfectly straight. It is kind of a flimsy cardstock. I mean, it's a stunning cardstock, don't get me wrong, but it's thin, so I don't know that I got it perfectly straight, but honestly, you can't really tell, and I don't... It's handmade. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody's going to tell me that my card doesn't look good because my frame's not perfectly straight. And if they are, they're not someone I would send a card to. So I kind of, you know, like, we aim for perfection. I say that in quotations. But I think at the end of the day, the cards are stunning and they're full of love. And that's what matters more than anything else. So I brought my Misti back in, and I'm going to use the exact same glue. And I'm going to, the ink, and I'm going to stamp out my sentiment. So my sentiment is from the Simon Says Stamp You Have My Heart stamp set. And it just says Happy Anniversary. And I'm just going to stamp that down. You saw I kind of placed where I wanted my floral bouquet to be. And then I'm just going to stamp that down in the same intense black ink. And then I do it twice just because I'm really light on how I do my sentiments. I kind of just barely touch them with the cardstock, so sometimes the center doesn't stamp as well as I'd like it to. And then we're going to put 3D thin foam squares on the back of my floral bouquet, and then I'm going to lay it down on top. Now, I didn't push it down the first time, so you're going to see that I kind of have the chance to lift it up, because I didn't actually set it down. Well, I set it down, sorry, but I didn't push it down. Like, I haven't actually tried to adhere it. I kind of like lightly set it down, and then I lift it back up. I am in love with these foam squares. They also, because they're such minuscule like dimension, like they're so thin, I love how they look. So I have a tendency to use them on pretty much everything now, because I like to have my cards have dimension but not be so thick that I can't mail them, if that kind of makes sense. So that's kind of where I've gone. I'm in love with these 3D foam strips. But so yeah, for foam squares. So then I brought in my, I believe this is the Spectrum Noir clear crystal glitter pen, and I kind of just put it all over them fleurs because I love the sparkle. You're gonna see it here. I'm gonna hold it up so you guys can kind of check out the sparkle when we get to the end. But I thought it was really pretty. And you know that I have a thing for pink and gold. I love pink and gold together. I think that they're a stunning combination. And I have a thing for florals. So this card just kind of made me happy in all the ways, because it's got all the things that I love. So you're going to see that I put the sparkle pen on first. I am going to come in after it's dry and add some white highlights on top, because I can't stop myself and because I think they look beautiful. But I did that because if you put them on first and then add the glitter pen afterwards, it will kind of like rub off of your white pen. So I did the glitter pen first, which usually I forget. I also brought in some gems because I can't stop myself. I love all the sparkly things. I have some pretty pink Posh clear crystals, I believe these are, clear crystal gems. And then here you can see I brought in my Sakura Jelly Roll pen, and I'm just going to add highlights wherever I think they're going to look good. There's honestly no rhyme or reason as to why I put them where I put them. I just kind of, I love them wherever I love them, and that's just, there's no, I mean, I've been asked kind of how you judge that, and I'm not, I don't really worry about a light source. I don't really worry about that at all. I kind of just bring it in and put some white highlights where I think they'll look good. And I do find that it gives your images a little more life. Not that these, I mean, look realistic, really. I need to work on my Copic coloring for sure. But I think that it just adds a little more to your card, and it looks stunning. So that's kind of my thought process. And then you guys can see that I wish I had added a third light, like a yellow green leaf, just because, you know, I love my uneven numbers, but I didn't, and I think it's still stunning. That's just something that I've noticed where I kind of wish I had brought in one more of those leaves because there's only two, but no, I think it looks good. So I'm going to hold it up here so you can check it out, see all that sparkle and its glory, and that's the card I have for you guys this week. I hope you enjoy it. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, and subscribe if you haven't before. I'd love to have you. Thank you so much, guys, and I cannot wait until I see you again. Bye-bye for now.